you for doing an excellent job on all those songs this morning. We really do appreciate it. So we are wrapping up our series today called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Now, you may think we already wrapped it up, but I want to remind you that we're going to go through and just kind of overview the entire series today. No, we're not going to do every bit of every sermon. That'd be a bit much. But I think there's some material we need to just recover very briefly, as well as add in some details that maybe you didn't get to hear in the first few sermons. Some important details that help, again, present evidence to let us know that there is a lot of reason, scientific and otherwise, to believe in God. So over the course of this series, we've been seeking to answer 4 questions. Does truth exist? Does God exist? Are miracles possible? And is the New Testament true? Now, other than those 4 questions, we also talked about morality, which we are going to talk about at the end again today. But the premise behind this series is put together by Frank Turek, is if you can answer yes to these 4 questions, you can reasonably conclude that you can trust the Bible and therefore trust Jesus. Obviously, we concluded that the answer was yes to these 4 questions. Not that that was a big surprise, but we did go through to see the evidence to let us confidently say yes to each of these questions. So let's go through them today. It begins with this one. Does truth exist? Now, the Bible makes a lot of truth claims. Jesus said he was the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus said he is the only way to heaven. The Bible says there is a right way and a wrong way to live your life. The Bible says that your relationship with Jesus has everything to do with where you will spend eternity, heaven or hell. The Bible makes a lot of truth claims. Therefore, if truth does not exist, there's no point to what we're doing anymore. There's no point to this type of preaching. I could give you an inspirational talk, go fight, win, but I couldn't do anything to get you with power and conviction, because there would be no truth to what I said. Without truth, can there be any real meaning to life? Can there be any real value to life without truth? Any value or meaning you would find would simply be subjective. Now, when we talk about truth, we have to deal with the claims being made today, like all truth is relative, or there is no truth. This is sometimes called postmodernism or relativism. You might remember me talking about this, or maybe you've come across it through some of your own experiences in life, whether watching YouTube videos or in conversations. And these phrases simply mean that there is no absolute truth. If that claim is true, the Bible can't be true. Likewise, the atheist can't be right, because they're making truth claims as well. The idea that all truth is relative is simply self-defeating. Truth is, as Frank Turek says, telling it like it is. That's what truth is. Truth is telling it like it is. If I said, I am here at Crestwood Christian Church, that's not an opinion. That's a fact. Now, I might be mentally checked out. I hope you're not. But I might be mentally checked out. But physically, I am at Crestwood Christian Church. That's true. If I was in Dallas and I said I'm at Crestwood Christian Church, that would be a lie. We understand there are things that are true and there are things that are not true. Truth is simply what corresponds to reality. Now, how do we discover what is false? We talked about this before, the law of non-contradiction. It means 2 opposite ideas cannot both be true at the same time in the same sense. For example, the earth cannot both be round and not round. It's either round or it's not round. You don't get both. You can't get both at the same time in the same sense. You could never have a meaningful conversation with someone if there was no truth. So that's the simple approach to this one. I don't think we need to spend a lot more time on it. I think we all agree, and I think the evidence is obvious that there is such a thing as truth. So the second question we deal with is, does God exist? Now, this was a much bigger question that we wrestled with, and we went over a couple of different sermons to do it. The way I describe it is we went from the telescope to the microscope to see the evidence that proves God exists. So we went from outer space to DNA, and we're going to look at some of that again today. We begin by understanding that the universe had a beginning. This is central to science and to faith. If the universe is eternal, meaning it has lasted forever, then it could conceivably exist without God. But we know through many lines of evidence that there is nothing in our world that is eternal. God is outside the world and created this world, and so it's very obvious that nothing within this world is eternal. In other words, there's no such thing as infinite. We can talk about that more later, but that is a very deep topic. I tried talking about it once with our Bible study group, and I think they all got mental constipation by the time we were done talking about it. So it's a great one-on-one conversation, difficult topic to preach on, but almost all scientists agree that the universe had a beginning. And this is key for a few reasons, and we'll go over those in a little bit. But one of the big lines of evidence for the beginning of the universe comes from the law called the second law of thermodynamics. And that sounds scary, and that's a lot of syllables in one word. It's not that big of a deal. We're going to walk through it together. The first law of thermodynamics says there is a set amount of energy in the universe. It cannot be created or destroyed. It just transforms from usable energy to unusable energy. And the universe is constantly losing energy and never gaining energy. So we can logically conclude that the universe is not eternal because at some point, if God allowed the universe to go long enough, it would run out of energy and therefore cease to exist. So the universe had a finite beginning when, in a sense, the clock was wound up and now it's winding down. Now, scientists call the universe at the very beginning of its creation in the most ordered possible state, meaning it had the most usable energy. However, at some point as it's been winding down, that usable energy begins to transform into unusable energy, and that becomes a serious issue for a lot of science, and we're going to explain that in a couple minutes. But I want to look at the theological implications put together by astronomer Robert Jastrow, who said this: theologians generally are delighted with the proof that the universe had a beginning, but astronomers are curiously upset. It turns out that scientist behaves the way the rest of us do when our beliefs are in conflict with the evidence. The fact that the universe had a finite beginning points to God. It points to a creator, a creative moment, and a lot of scientists don't like it. All right, so Jastrow went on to say this: for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He's scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he's greeted by a band of theologians who've been sitting there for centuries. It's like the cosmic egg that was birthed out of our universe logically requires a cosmic chicken. Don't forget, this is the thermodynamics law. We're going to come back to it in a couple minutes. So the question isn't if the universe began. It did. The question is how. How did the universe begin? Again, science teaches us that the Big Bang caused it. As a Christian, I have no problem with the Big Bang because I know who caused it to happen. I know who made this event take place to create the universe. So if you want to use the term Big Bang, if you want to use the term creation, to me it's all the same because God caused it to happen. That's the key element that we're holding on to here. Now remember, for the universe to begin, there were three ingredients that came into existence at the same time: space, time, and matter. This is important because space is where it happens, time is when it happens, and matter is what it's made of. And so therefore, whatever caused the universe is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Well, the only thing I can think of that is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial is God. God is what we describe as spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. So whoever or whatever caused the Big Bang was most likely something that we call God. Frank Turek sums it up that we basically have two choices. Either nothing created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. That is our ultimate two choices when we consider the beginning of the universe. Now, which one of these sounds more reasonable to you, to a rational person? I'll admit, number one's a miracle. But at least you have a miracle worker. Number two's a miracle without someone to do the miracle. Only one of those is truly reasonable. I read a story, it said it might be apocryphal, so I guess there was some probably a grain of truth to it, but it became a legend and it probably got inflated a little bit. But it talks about how Sir Isaac Newton had a perfectly scaled down replica of the then known universe. And it had these belts and cogs and everything, and so it would actually spin and rotate in perfect timing. And one day an agnostic friend of his came by and saw it, and he said, "Who made this wonderful machine?" And Newton said, "No one." The man was very confused. He said, "What are you talking about?" And Newton said, "That's right. The parts just came together by chance, and now it revolves in orbit with perfect timing." And his friend was unconvinced, and his friend should have been unconvinced. But that's what we're told to believe about our universe. That is on a much grander scale. That is on a much more precise timing. And yet we're told it was a cosmic accident. It just happened. Remember, out of this explosion, not only do we have a universe that is understandable through scientific study, that is ticking and on time, where we can measure the seasons and our rotation around the earth and our rotation each day, but we have complex systems of DNA and all the foundational elements and processes that are just right for life to exist, from the force of gravity, our distance to the sun, and so on. We are supposed to believe all of that was by chance, by accident. I don't think so. Rabbi Akiba ben Joseph puts it this way: a house testifies that there was a builder, a dress that there was a weaver, a door that there was a carpenter. So our world by its existence proclaims its creator, God. Or Princeton professor Edward Conklin put it this way: the probability of life originating from accident is comparable to the probability of the unabridged dictionary resulting from an explosion in a printing factory. The fact that life is complex and had a beginning implies a beginner. The fine-tuning necessary for life to exist on our planet points to God. However, some say, well, evolution explains it all. No, it doesn't. It doesn't explain anything about how it started or where the initial elements came from to allow for the life to be built as we know it. Evolution has some real issues that we got to talk about, and it goes back to the second law of thermodynamics. This law has serious implications against evolution. Now, you may say, okay, I still don't fully understand this law. Okay, I'm going to put it in its most simple form. It states everything moves from order to chaos if left alone. Everything moves from order to chaos if left alone. And we know this is true by observation. We got a nice paved parking lot out there. What happens if we leave it alone for 5 years and don't touch it? What's going to happen? It's going to crack, and there's going to be grass coming up, and roots are going to break it, and it come back in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you're not even going to see the asphalt anymore. It's going to be completely overcome. The order that was once there will be removed by chaos. Let's look at it in another realm. So here we have the Colosseum, preserved in Rome. They think it might have looked something like this when it was in its heyday, when it was fully functional. But then it's to where it is today. What happened? The second law of thermodynamics happened. It went from order to chaos. And right now it's preserved really well. Why is it preserved really well?
Because of order.
Because of order, and intelligence is causing the order. It is workers, construction workers. It is people who are intelligent with how to preserve this monument to keep it functional and alive today. If we didn't have people working on it to this point, the Colosseum would probably be a heap of stones that would be unrecognizable at all. We always move from order to chaos if there's no intelligent input. You have to have intelligent input. But when it comes to evolution, we're told the exact opposite. When it comes to evolution, we're told that slowly the chaotic state of the Big Bang produced the greatest order we've ever seen and the greatest magnitude of information in DNA. Everything we observe in life tells us that is exactly the opposite of reality. Things move from order to chaos if left alone. Put a group of toddlers in a room and remove all the adults. What do you think is going to happen? Well, in case you have a hard time with your imagination, I was reminded of a movie this past week with Arnold Schwarzenegger. How many of you ever saw Kindergarten Cop? All right, very good. I loved that movie when I was a kid. I thought it was hilarious. And it's about Arnold going undercover as a kindergarten teacher to help solve this crime. And his first day is a little tough. He's never had to deal with toddlers before. And so he leaves his classroom with a little girl who needs to go to the bathroom. He doesn't know what to do. He gets a teacher across the hall to take her to the bathroom. And that's where we're going to pick up the video clip. I'd like you to watch along with me.
First day?
Yes.
I'll take care of her.
Thank you.
You know, kindergarten is like the ocean. You don't want to turn your back on it.
They're okay. Don't worry. Everything is under control. No. Monsters. What is this?
Aren't you going to wake me up? No, 2 more days of this, and you'll quit.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! No. Don't stop this. Oh, no. Attention! This is your new class mascot.
What happened to your dog?
This is not a dog. This is a ferret.
What's a fairy?
That's a ferret.
If he bites you, you get rabies and you die.
No, that's not true. He never bites.
Can I pet him?
Sure, but one at a time, okay? Good. Okay, next one. Come on. Yes. Good. Yeah.
Now we're having fun. Did you notice, once the teacher was gone, the classroom went crazy. There was no intelligent force to keep the order. But once Arnold got a hold of it again, I don't recommend you yelling, shut up to a bunch of kindergartners. That'll probably not go over very well. But the chaos subsided and order was gained. If left alone, kids, animals, nature, and even adults, life will move from order to chaos. Think about it. If you have a group of people, it always develops where someone tries to put together an order, a hierarchy. Someone's got to be in charge. Someone's got to be the decision maker. Someone's got to be the builder. You got to figure out the order to make life work. Because if left alone, it will lead to chaos. I do want to point out, evolution is not a salvation issue. Many have tried to use evolution to disprove God, but evolution, as author Michael Denton put it, is a theory in crisis. But regardless of where you come down on the issue, whether God used evolution over millions of years or whether he did a more recent event, it doesn't change the need for God. The fact that things have moved from order to chaos and evolution works differently tells us that there was intelligence behind it. Why do our roads stay maintained? Why do buildings still stand? Why do societies function? It's because there is supposed to be intelligence behind each one of those things. That's the only likely scenario if evolution were even true, that there had to be intelligence involved in the process. Oh, there's so much more I'd like to say on it. I could do probably 10 sermons just on it because the information's really intriguing. But we do need to move along this morning. Are miracles possible? Question 3. The conventional wisdom taught in universities and by skeptics is no. Miracles are events that we don't understand, but given enough time and we'll understand them. So we can't explain it. If we had more information, more science, more knowledge, it could be explained naturally. In universities, the man that is often most quoted to claim that miracles are not possible is a man by the name of David Hume. If you want to go down the full list of his arguments, go to the church Facebook page, look up sermon from October 11th. It's also on the website, and that'll give you the full arguments that he gives, and we break it down. But his whole argument that is used to refute miracles doesn't even discuss if miracles are possible. His whole argument is whether a person should believe in miracles or not. Now, I have to ask a question, and I want you to think about this for a minute. Seriously. Does that sound scientific to you? Does that sound scientific? Imagine that you had a group get together, and they had a leader in their science group, and he says, as you do your research, you need to do it believing gravity does not exist. And he said, but wait a minute, gravity does exist. No, it doesn't. Well, I've seen evidence for, no, you can't do it, no gravity. And you'd say, well, that's ridiculous. You can't do this research if you don't take into account for gravity. But that's exactly what they're doing when it comes to miracles. They don't exist. But that just, it could happen. No, it can't happen. But that's the only explanation. Doesn't matter. Then it doesn't work. Do something else. Come up with a new excuse. They are not giving you even the opportunity to consider their possibility. Now, I do believe, and we talked about this before, we use the term miracle maybe too loosely and too often to describe events that aren't true miracles. But that doesn't refute the fact that they're possible. Again, we're just asking if they're possible, not if they're likely, not if they're probable, not if they're common. We're saying that they're just possible. And David Hume's argument is simply don't acknowledge it. Don't even think about believing in it. He says rare one-time events have very little evidence, so we should ignore them. But David Hume's argument is faulty. He believes in a lot of rare one-time events, like the Big Bang. He believed in that. It was rare. It was one time. It was not observable. But it seems to have happened. But atheists like Richard Dawkins have gone a new approach with those people who believe in miracles. His words, not my own, say this. People who believe in miracles are irrational, unscientific, unintelligent, ignorant, and needing help. He's saying we're mentally crazy to believe in miracles. Does that sound scientific to you? Yet even certain atheists believe in certain miracles. They won't call it that, but it's true. Again, the evolution cycle. The fact that order, that it moved from chaos to order. The Big Bang and the fact that something was created out of nothing. How did all of this happen? The formation of the stars is still not understood by scientific methods alone today. Astrobiologist Paul Davies said it this way: how did stupid atoms spontaneously write their own software? Nobody knows. There is no known law of physics able to create information from nothing. Atheists may claim to be materialistic, believing that only the real world, the physical world, exists, but it is simply insufficient to understand life as we know it. There are some things that have no natural cause, and that there is no reasonable or intelligent answer from the physical realm. We call it a miracle when it appears to go against natural laws. And then if the evidence later presents itself, maybe we can pull back on it. But evolution goes against the second law of thermodynamics. That by definition is a miracle. So don't let miracles hang you up. They're possible. And yes, I believe they are rare, but they are possible. All right, so let's get to the fourth question. Is the New Testament true? Now, in order to answer this question, we looked at two sub-questions. One, do we have an accurate copy of the New Testament? And secondly, did the authors tell the truth? Now, the New Testament was written mostly, if not all, before 70 AD. Certainly by 90, all of it was compiled, or written. It wasn't all compiled till a little bit later. But this is important because it means that it was written close to when the events actually happened. The farther you get from an event, the more likely legends happen, the more likely exaggerations happen, rumors happen, or downright lies are written down. So the fact that these were written down close to when Jesus and the church initially formed is very important to knowing we have an accurate version of what actually happened. Likewise, the early church fathers, the men who helped the infant church gain structure, common teachings, and successfully spread the good news of Jesus around the known world, they quoted the New Testament frequently in their writings. And in fact, If you had just a few authors from the first 3 centuries alone, you could reconstruct over 50% of the New Testament from their writings. Even skeptic Bart Ehrman admits that. Now, he says we can't know they were using original copies, which is its own issue, and we can go through that later. But there's plenty of evidence to believe that we have accurate copies of the New Testament. But the more important question is, do we have the truth? Did they tell the truth? And we've had 7 lines of evidence to determine if the New Testament authors told the truth. And so let's pull them up here. We have early sources, eyewitness details, embarrassing stories, excruciating deaths, elaborate testimony, expected predictions, and extra-biblical writers. Now, there's a whole bunch in there that we're not going to cover today. You'll need to go back and check that sermon in particular. But we went through all these lines of evidence to let us know that they were not lying, but they were telling the truth. Again, it happened close to the original event. That's key. Eyewitness details. They knew things only those who were there would actually be able to tell us. Embarrassing stories. They told stories about themselves that no one would admit to if it wasn't true. Excruciating deaths. They went to their graves believing it. Again, that by itself isn't enough to prove it. Any one of these isn't enough to prove it. But you put all the evidence together and you got a really strong case to believe that they were telling the truth. And we could go through the rest, but you get the idea. Add them all up. And the case for an accurate New Testament that tells the truth is overwhelming. But where we left off last time was morality. The one thing we did not talk about was the origin of mind and morality. The origin of mind and morality from atoms and energy has long been a problem for a materialist. It's a major theme of philosopher Thomas Nagel's book, Mind and Cosmos. Look at this here. A fig tree produces figs, not apples. That seems obvious. Likewise, physics and chemistry produce physical and chemical outcomes. However, mind and morality are not just matters of physics and chemistry. Sure, creatures that are physical and chemical have mind and morality, but how did such non-material things arise from the material? This is a serious problem for materialism. A lot of atheists are materialists, basically believing the only thing that exists in reality is what is physical, what you can actually touch. But you can't dissect a person's brain and find their mind. It doesn't exist in that space. The brain has a lot to do with how your mind functions. And if your brain is damaged, it impacts how your mind functions. We get that. But it doesn't explain how you can have thoughts in your head. It doesn't explain how you process information or why you follow morals and codes of ethics at all. The atheist has no sufficient explanation to the cause of mind and morality. The atheist can't explain why certain morals have been held as true across virtually every human civilization that has existed, such as murder and theft. God has made man in his image, a creature that requires mind and morality. Without God, you can't explain it or seek to understand it. As such, since we are created in God's image, we are able to think about God and know him. That is the very reason for our existence. The Bible declares this before any major philosophical writer appears in history. When we remove God from life, things change dramatically and for the worse. Now, I don't want to harp on any topic too much, but that's why it's a big deal for me and many Christians that we value life from conception to natural death. That's why we care, because we are made in God's image. Life is a gift of God. It is a gift of a divine creator, and that's why it's worth protecting through all phases of life. So where do we go from here? Well, as the worship team joins me on stage, it's the question that you have to ask yourself. What are you going to do with the information that's been put before you? You have a responsibility to evaluate it and to make a determination. Do you believe it or not? Do we share it or not? Do we take what we know and let others know that there is good news of great joy for all people? We have a responsibility to act on this knowledge. Jesus told the church in Laodicea, I wish you were hot or cold and not lukewarm. Jesus doesn't want you to waste your life riding the fence of indecision. Because here's the reality. Most people are indecisive because they don't want to make a decision and they don't want to be forced to, and so they just claim I'm thinking about it. I'm just thinking about it. I'll come to terms later. Jesus says at some point you have to make a decision. Joshua told the nation of Israel, choose today who you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Choose today. If Jesus were here today, he would invite you to choose him. So what are you going to do? Well, I pray that you will choose today to accept the truths that have been presented. And if you're not a Christian, that you would put Jesus first by making him the Lord of your life. And if you are, then I ask that you would choose to share. That you would choose to share this good news, because there are so many people in this world today who don't know that they're a child of God. They just haven't had anybody share that good news with them. You can choose to do that. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I don't think you do either. It's time that we believe it and we share it. If you have a decision to make this morning, meet me down front as we stand and as we sing.